In this episode of Swim Talk, are you tired of zooming? And what's the difference and what's the similarity between the thin black line on the bottom of your pool and the more than 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail? Stay tuned and find out. Hello, and welcome to this edition of Swim Talk, everything about swimming from A to B and anything else we feel like talking about, with your host, Bob Button.
I'm the B. And Dana Abbott.
The A.
We'd plan on doing the show from the Dana Abbott Natatorium, but I'm boycotting the facility until the folks in Katy get their signage corrected. Get with the program, Katy.
If you're going to risk your time listening to even a part of this podcast, you ought to know a little bit about us before we dive. Get that? It's an aquatic term. Into some of the items in our stack of stuff to discuss this week.
Risk? I think you meant waste your time. All right. We're the coaching pros. We call ourselves lifers because we spent most of our years in the coaching business.
So far.
Yeah, so far. We've got about 80 years, maybe a little more, of combined coaching experience. And between us, we've coached beginning through Olympic caliber swimmers at the collegiate club, summer league, high school levels.
We are both veteran classroom teachers with the scars to prove it. And Bob also has administrative experience in public secondary schools.
Worst years of my life.
I remember.
All right. Dana was twice elected president of NISCA. That's the National Interscholastic Swimming Coaches Association. Also did a stint as president of our state association, TISCA, as well as a contributor to several national magazines on swimming, and he's co-author of the highly acclaimed recent book about the legendary University of Texas swimming coach, my buddy Eddie Reese. And the title of that, so that you can get out there and get it on Amazon, is Eddie Reese, Coaching Swimming and Teaching Life.
Eddie Reese always seems to be stealing your best ideas.
I have not gotten a hold of my lawyer, but as soon as I do, we're going to settle this.
Yeah, at least we might be able to get some long-term lane usage in their new outdoor pool.
Awesome.
A little concession to us. For more than 50 years, seven-time USA Olympic coach Eddie Reese has mentored college men in life and swimming, resulting in 14 NCAA team titles at the University of Texas and 39 Olympic gold medals. His life and his coaching experience is summarized in an excellent fashion in the new book, Eddie Reese, Coaching Swimming, Teaching Life, by authors Chuck Warner and Dana Abbott. Bill Sweetenham, Australian Olympic coach, says, Eddie Reese, no person a better coach and no coach a better person. This book says it all. A masterclass from a true genius in our sporting world. The book, Eddie Reese, Coaching Swimming, Teaching Life, is available on Amazon.com and also from the website eddiereesebook.com. Get your copy today. All right, so we've got a lot of things happening around us right now related to the coronavirus, and one of the things that's impacted us, and what we're using right now to make this podcast, is an application called Zoom. And I think you've been using it in your classroom teaching, haven't you?
Yeah, we did some geometry items. It was more of a check-in type of Zoom for us because we're still trying to get our feet wet with this, both the students and the teachers. So it was more of a, hey, we'll post on Google Classroom the assignment, and then let's get together and talk about how that went or any issues you had and things like that. So it was kind of a check-in and follow-up type thing. It worked. We're going to refine it and do a better job in the fall if that's how we have to start out.
The Zoom application is being used by my club swim team right now to conduct all of our dryland sessions. And you're using it to teach classroom materials.
Right.
but the zooming is getting a mixed reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, we also had to do some of our teacher training um, via Zoom.
I've got an article I was just reading from the Wall Street Journal. I read a lot of off topic or off mainstream articles.
Yeah, Wall Street
Zoom,
Journal doesn't have enough pictures for me. I don't like all the words.
especially the ones you use the crayons on. But they've got an article in here talking about Zoom fatigue. And there is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who is really high up in her business. And she says she made a tweet recently. She said, "Zoom fatigue has me wanting a landline and a rotary phone."
Wow, I would landline and touch phone, but I don't know if I'd go rotary.
Well, she's a power user. She says she spends 9 out of 10 conversations on Zoom 6 days a week.
Oh, ow.
Uh, but she says the hours aren't the problem. It's the real time image of herself on the Zoom grid,
Mhm.
reflecting her every move as if she's in front of a mirror. She says, "I am flat out not used to that."
You know, the best way to solve that problem is just put up a
Turn off the
picture and
video.
stop the video. Right. I've got a really neat snowman chimenea that I use. Have a cigar sticking out of his mouth, and that's what I put on for my picture because I don't want to be looking at all that.
It's tiring to see your
I,
face.
yeah,
I was talking with my sister the other day, and she said that her husband likes to do all this FaceTime stuff with some far flung relatives and friends, and she says I just don't like the way I look on a video, and I think that's one thing.
right. But I mean, I can see that the technology can be a little exhausting, especially for an old timer like me trying to learn a new trick. And we have several teachers on our staff that really struggled for a while with it because we want to do everything right, and it's almost impossible for us to do everything right. We have to do about 4 or 5 practices and tests and see if we can figure it all out before we can even say we're almost what do I want to say, adequate.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say we're good or polished. We're just getting by.
Well, about 3 weeks after this original article came out, they had some reader responses. And one thing you mentioned earlier about putting a picture up there instead of using a video, this reader said found it she found it interesting that people are tired of Zoom meetings and want to go back to phone calls. Well, as you said, there's a very simple way to do this. You turn off the video.
Right.
You can take a stock photo of yourself, maybe from 15 years or 15 pounds ago, and use that as your
For
as
50
your
pounds
or
ago.
50 pounds ago. But there is a benefit to that. You save a lot of bandwidth. Video eats up bandwidth like crazy. A
Oh, it eats
static,
up your phone battery too if you're doing a Zoom on a phone.
absolutely.
Turn that sucker off.
Yeah. Well, obviously, people put way too much stock in seeing other people, and as you've pointed out, there's delays from the video. There's a bandwidth being eat up. Another reader said after the initial hello and how are you, as I turn on the video and the microphone, size the Zoom window down to a corner, and continue to do
Good.
my work while the boss plows through the agenda and my coworkers add their usual comments. What
Guilty.
yeah,
Guilty
what
as
used to be a time
charged.
drain is now much more productive. She said when the conversation picks up or or when she hears her name mentioned, she can always hop back in. But it
Oh,
can fix some of these routine weekly meetings, which right now I've got 10 weekly meetings plus the time spend with you doing these podcasts.
right. Well, the hosts have figured us out. Those of us that don't want to be super active participants, they force it on us. They'll put us in another room. They'll team us with somebody randomly, and all of a sudden, you got to do this little activity, answer question, what have you, and then when we all come back, you're going to have to report. So they do have a way of forcing us back to focus, bringing us back to into the Zoom. Even if we want to be on the periphery, we got to get back into the middle.
Yeah, and there are good ways to run your Zoom meetings, and there are ways that this is so new for so many people. There's some places that have been using this remote learning and teaching for years and years and years. Um, we in public education, for the most part, are not in that group. So, especially in the coaching, because all of our coaching, we do it on deck. We do it face to face. We see these kids every day. We talk with them, and then we spend 8 to 10 weeks away from them. We have to learn new ways to communicate. And I'll tell you, when you're talking about 9, 10, 12, 13-year-old kids, as adept and good as they might be, traveling around and navigating on the interweb and all of these software games and programs,
Right.
um, they haven't been coached that way. So they're used to playing games and socializing and so on. But when it comes to uh, doing push-ups, planks, jumping jacks, all these different dryland exercises that are thrown into the mix, that's something new for them.
They're not speaking our language, terminology, what have you.
No.
And we're not speaking theirs. Steve Martin had a good line, oh, maybe 40 or 50 or 30, 40 years ago. I don't know. And he said something about, some people have a way with words and others not have way. And that kind of describes me on this.
Well, it's sort of interesting. I was listening to a webinar by Wayne Goldsmith, the coach from Australia, last night. And I told you about this earlier, and he said one of the problems. The topic of the meeting was how to light the flame again, how to ignite the passion, and get the kids excited about being back in the water again. Because you know what's happened in the last 8 to 10 weeks before we could get back in the pools, the kids discovered a different way of life. They didn't have to get up
Hmm.
early in the morning. They didn't have
Right.
to say to a friend, "No, I can't. I have swimming." They didn't wake up sore. They didn't wake up tired. They didn't wake up smelling like chlorine with dry skin. They discovered
Right.
a new way of life, and part of the challenge is helping them transition back to and buy into and enjoy what we are starting to provide again.
Right. Right. Get them, get out of that utopian world you've slipped into and get back to reality.
I'll tell you, it's something seeing these kids right now. But one thing we are noticing, the kids are getting better on dry land. We're seeing improved technique. We can actually see improvements and gains in strength because of their ability to perform some of these things better and with more skills. You can tell if someone's jumping higher or farther, or if they're holding their planks longer, things like
Hmm.
that.
Right. Well, and as far as in the pool, I kind of like the, hey, we're not going to have a summer league swim meet every daggone Saturday, and Janie's mom is not going to be asking us, well, how come he added 100th of a second in his 25 or her 25 freestyle
Yeah, should he been
from
wearing that
last
tech
week?
suit?
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah. Shave down for tomorrow's duel against East or West Cupcake, right?
Yeah.
Um, no, it does get a little ridiculous, and it's nice to just practice and train right through all these weekends and just say, hey, we're going to work on this, we're going to work on that, and we're not going to worry about what your 25 fly time is or your 100 IM. Um, that's kind of the nice part about being back in the water right now. We're halfway back. We're in training mode, but we don't have to worry about a swim meet or making a tags cut or things like that. We can really, like you said, get the strokes refined, talk about our turns, and work on all that other stuff.
Well, speaking of worrying about time, it's time for us to take a short commercial break for shameless commerce, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and we were worrying about time. We seem to, a lot of us have a lot of time on our hands, and that makes us sort of crazy sometimes. And I was thinking we are alone a lot in our houses or in our home offices. The kids, when they're doing their dry land that we were just talking about, they're in a room by themselves, unless the dog is coming in there to get in their way. But about 5 years ago, you experience solitude on an incredible scale. Tell
Yeah.
tell us about what you did on the in the eastern part of the U.S.
Yeah. Well, when my students and athletes hear this next line, they roll their eyes and then they glaze over. Back when I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2015, uh,
Thud, the
it was,
sound of bodies hitting the floor.
yeah, it's not again, not another one of these. Yeah, no, we let's see, Bobby and I started February
Bobby, your
7th.
son.
Right, right, and finished. I want to say July 30th. His birthday is on the 31st, and I asked him if he wanted to hold off a day before we summited the Mount Katahdin there up in Maine. He said, "No, no, let's go." And it's kind of funny because you get to the summit, and a lot of these people that have been hiking for months like we were, and they start boo-hooing and, oh, I'm so sad it's over. And hey, not us. Hey, it's over, let's get out of here, go home. This was now, as I look back 5 years later, uh, I don't feel the pain so much, and it's more enjoyable, and I get a little nostalgic about it. But while it was happening, there was a lot of cold and wet and misery. But I wouldn't do it again. But I'm glad we did it.
There was a recent book by an author named Fenton Johnson. The title of the book is "At the Center of All Beauty," and he put together a book that had capsule biographies of maybe a dozen or so writers, artists, performers who rely a lot on creative expression. And the solitude that you experience when you're walking the Appalachian Trail mirrors what he says. Johnson says that solitude is particularly important to the creators among us. And I would suggest that swim coaches are in that same category. I think they're creators. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, let's say you're a site head coach or the coach at a site, satellite or whatever, or a small team, and you got your little group in the water, and it's just you. And some things are going to come to you, believe it or not, while you're watching your kids go up and down the pool. You better have a notepad with you or an electronic device so that you can make a note of that. You might come up with something really different. And and you're right. As you're as you're hiking mile after mile alone, because Bobby was always a lot faster than me, and he'd be waiting for me sitting on a rock. Maybe around lunchtime, I'd finally catch up to him. But yeah, there were a lot of times where he and I might have hiked most all day and never saw another soul. And it's nice to let your mind wander and maybe think of something new, come up with a different way to do things. Um, and I coaches do this a lot. I think if you're going out there and giving them the same thing day in and day out, and you're getting tired of watching it, can you imagine how tired they are of doing it? You got to come up with something new. Got to change things up a little bit.
In your 6 months and change of being on the trail, there were times where it was just you and Bobby. There were times I remember.
Yep.
I remember Bobby had to leave you for a while to go catch an airplane to go do a job interview, and you were all by
Right.
yourself. You'd occasionally run into people on the trail. There were some days you would take what you referred to as 0 days. You'd go into town. You'd scrape the grime and the stink off of you, and
Right.
go to the ramen buffet and stuff yourself with noodles and carbohydrates.
Right.
But so you ran the gamut from being totally alone to being in the midst of a little town of people. But
Hmm.
one of the when we think of people in solitude, I think so many people, especially those who've been through high school English, um, conjure up images of Thoreau. And I got a quote that I dug up here, and I want you to tell me what you think about it. He wrote,
Okay.
I love to be alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude." What do you say about that?
I can definitely relate. There were definitely a few times where I was out there all alone and didn't mind it a bit. And when you're planning a hike, See, originally I was going to do the whole thing alone. Bobby was still swimming as a pro post grad, and at the last minute decided he would go with me. But up until then, when I was planning and people were saying, "You're going to go by yourself?" Yeah, yeah. What's so crazy about that? Um, didn't bother me to be alone and work. You go maybe 3 or 4 days, and you're going to get to a road where the trail crosses a highway, and or maybe even just a dirt road or a back road, and stick your thumb out or walk into town. And yeah, you go from totally alone to now I'm in the Family Dollar with 8 of my best friends.
Well, speaking of alone, you've
Look,
talked about
looking
you've
for a
talked about
rice
an
side.
yeah, you've talked about another kind of alone, and I'm not sure if you were kidding when you are trying to prod me into thinking about it too. But swimming the English Channel at our age,
Oh yeah.
that is a great solitude. There is, I think the first one who crossed it was Captain Matthew Webb back in the 19th century. But then that wasn't enough. That somebody had to do it faster, and then someone had to do it even faster. And then someone
And
said, "You
double
know what?
crossings. And then
Yeah,
those
and
women got involved.
well, not only that, there now has been, I think, a triple crossing."
Wow.
So the question is, when you got to the end of the trail at Mount Katahdin up in Maine,
Hmm.
did the thought ever cross your mind, gee, that was fun. Now I think I'll go back and do it again?
No, no, I responded hell no to anybody that asked. And Claire asked, well, are you going to go for the Triple Crown, which would be Pacific Crest Trail and Continental Divide Trail, would be the other two to the Triple Crown. And again, a resounding hell no. Um, I got the experience I wanted, and now there's other things. You said English Channel. I'd love to swim the English Channel. The big difference is on the Appalachian Trail, you can start out huffing and puffing, 8 miles a day, plodding along, and as you go, you get in shape. By the time you're finished, you're knocking out 20 plus miles a day with 30 pounds on your back, and it's nothing. With the English Channel, it's kind of the opposite. I think you got to spend a long time preparing because you can't get in shape on the way across. So it's going to take a whole lot more prep to do an English Channel swim than it did to do a 2,000-mile hike.
Yeah, I think those of us who didn't pay that much attention in high school English class might be under the mistaken impression that Henry David Thoreau lived his whole life out there in the woods. But he actually was only there, I've got the notes here, 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And
Mm-hmm.
then and then he went back to town. And he actually didn't live that far from the town,
Right. He was just a little
just a
outside of
couple,
town
couple
in his
miles,
little
but
spot.
but
Right.
up on the but he said it seemed to me that I had several more lives to live and could not spare any more time for that one. And it sounds like that while solitude might be enlightening and help us with our creativity, I think you might agree that too much solitude, like too much of anything, can be just too much.
Right. You want to get back to it for a time, but I don't think you want to do it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to do this topic all the time, so we're going to take a short break.
Good.
We'll be right we'll be right back while we go and get another cup of coffee. Stay tuned. Okay, I got some more coffee. Did you get some?
Actually, it's a coffee and hot chocolate mix.
Coffee and hot chocolate. Okay. That's real good for a nice cool day. I've got a picture I'm looking at right here of a lady walking in a national park in Chile in South America, and her jacket makes it look like maybe she is Chile. But the walking in nature, whenever we take a walk, it changes the way we do things. It increases our breathing, oxygen, invigorates our brains.
Keeps us away
Um,
from the refrigerator.
yeah, but during this lockdown, I had just gotten back into a regimen of swimming 3 or 4 days a week, and then the pool was locked down. I couldn't go to the gym; that was locked down. There wasn't anywhere you could go that you were used to going for fitness unless you were an outdoor person in the first place. But A little
Right.
research found out walking can be a kind of behavioral preventive against depression. It benefits us on physical and psychological levels. It just made me think all that walking that you did on the Appalachian Trail, that's over what, 2,000 miles?
Well, yeah, 2,189.2.
Yeah, well, when you're on that trail, since I've never done anything like this except when I got lost out in a couple national parks in Utah, I was and and got scared to death, thinking I was never going to find my way back.
No, well,
How
we
did,
got lost, so we probably really went more closer to 2,500 miles
oh yeah,
by the time we got back on the trail. Yeah, I know
it's
it's. I
interesting.
know the feeling.
So when you're not worried about being eaten by a bear or falling into a chasm or dying of starvation or thirst, what sort of things do you think about while you're walking? There's got to be more than just one more step, one more step, one more step. What
Kind
did you
of
find yourself thinking about a lot?
kind of odd. There were times where you just let your mind go. There were times when I'd sing songs to myself, and I'm a terrible singer. Um, if I had a hammer, Peter, Paul, and Mary, uh, King of the Road, who was that? Roger
King
Miller.
King of the Trail.
Yeah, and there was another one I can't think of right now. Oh, This Land Is Your Land, Guthrie.
Yeah, Guthrie.
Those songs went through my mind, and I just kept chugging along and singing it to myself. Those helped. Make your own kind of music. Was that Mama Cass? Anyway,
The Village
that
People.
was one thing. You just let your mind go. But other times, yeah, you might have a little epiphany now and then.
Is that a result of having so many usually interrupting distractions removed by being out there in the middle of nature?
Right. And also, if you've ever just done an out and back type hike, just you've gone walking out and back, you notice things so differently on the way back. You know, what you might
Mhm.
have not seen at all, or seen in one way on your way out looks different, or you catch something new on the way back. So um, I think walking in nature allows you to see new things, and maybe something will pop into your head that this is something that's going to lead me to another idea. Can't think anything off the top of my head right now, but I do. And some people hate out and back hikes because, okay, I've already hiked this. Now I'm
Don't
hiking
want to
it
do it again.
backwards. It's different. It's if you look at it a different way, an out and back hike is really just as good as a loop hike.
Well,
You're going to see things differently on the way back.
speaking of following that trail, that path, you're going down that line through the woods, and you're talking about out and back. How is that different, and how is it similar to our kids who are going up and down the black line at the pool?
Oh yeah. Oh wow. Well, something did come to mind. After I was finished, I kind of collected my thoughts, and one of the things I wanted to do better back on the pool deck was celebrate the little small steps. In coaching, most of the time we're looking ahead. We might be on a 26-week cycle. Who knows? You might shave and rest your kids only twice a year, depending on what level you're at. But you don't really celebrate the steps along that way. It's kind of all or nothing at the end.
But should we
And
be celebrating those small steps?
absolutely, and that's where I think the hike helped me a lot. Uh, the small victories, getting to the next shelter alive, um, getting to the next town. These little things. Yeah, the goal is to get all the way there, and
It
a lot
makes
of
me
people don't make it all the way. But
makes
those
me
little
think.
steps along the way are great.
Well, those little steps, for going a long way, and finding those little steps you can take some pride in achieving. What about a kid who is just going back and forth in that 25-yard or 50-meter pool? What are some of the steps that they can take pride in doing? Would it be streamlining a foot further off the wall, or taking an extra
Sure,
underwater kick than you did the last time?
right. Maybe touching the wall with two hands instead of one on butterfly would be good. Uh, not today. Today I kind of joked with my kids that we need to have an athlete of the week and a mathlete of the week. Who did the best with the pace clock? You're the mathlete of the week. You were able to count and leave on time for your set. And athlete of the week, there's somebody that broke the pool record in the 50-yard freestyle kick, something like that. But just anything to to appreciate, like you said, what they're doing. They're looking at the black line every day, up and down. Um, give them a little pat on the back for something that they did.
So does this also go back to the oft-quoted statement, it's not the destination, but the journey?
Yeah, that's it. That's the truth. Yeah.
We're at the end of our journey for this edition. Hope you've enjoyed it. You can get in touch with us. We'll put in a little plug in a commercial segment later, how to get in touch with us, because we don't know how to get in touch with us right now from your end. But it's been fun. Get out there and walk. Love your kids. Make sure you're not putting too much pressure on them. I'll finish up with one more thing I heard from Wayne Goldsmith last night is when you're getting started back in the water, be soft, don't be hard. We want these kids to enjoy it, and we want them to want to come back. Then we reopened the pools. It was not difficult to get the kids back for that first practice because they all wanted to see their friends, and it was just fun getting back in the water. The challenge was getting them to want to come back for the second practice. So
Right.
we don't want to be too hard while we're drawing them back in. We want to reel them in slowly before we stick the hook in them and drag them into the boat. So,
All right. Yeah.
all right. Well, it's been fun chatting again, and we will talk to all you listeners next time, all three of you.
Yes.
See you next time.